how does his passing take place? What is the death of a tzadik? How does it happen? The answer is that every tzadik, Zohar comes to Noach, Ish tzadik, Elo Teldes, Noach Ish tzadik. Again, Elo Teldes, Noach, twice Noach in a row. Why twice Noach was a tzadik? Because it shows that a tzadik has two souls. Two souls or two half souls. A soul within him and a soul in heaven, the Shema in heaven. This topic we're going to take up more next week with Shabbos. In a rich form. You'll see some revelations there. Now the tzaddik has these two souls, one in heaven and one on earth. The one in heaven stays in heaven. One on earth stays to give him life as he serves the Shema on earth. The time comes for him to pass away. The Menachem says that the soul in heaven descends, the heavenly soul comes down and merges with the bodily soul. And there's such a strong merging because this is actually both in the same part of the tzaddik. When these two merge, they become inseparable. The heavenly soul cannot remain on earth, so that begins to elevate itself and rise upwards back to heaven, taking with it the soul that's in the tzaddik, the earthly soul. So therefore, what does that mean? It means that there is a time when the tzaddik becomes twice as great as he is during his lifetime. That time is the moment of his passing, he's twice as great. This was the secret of it. Said, Elisha Navi asked Eliyahu Navi. He's about to pass away. He said to him, ask me something and I'll grant it to you. Elisha Navi said, give me double your power. How can you ask double your power? How is that logically right? They're not children. These are great tzaddikim, great minds. Give me double your power. So Eliyahu Navi said, if you will see me taken from you, so be it. Nobody can explain that. Anyone says, if you'll be there at the time of my estaltos, you'll have double my power, because you receive a ha'orah, a light, of both the neshamas, not the one that I have now, therefore you'll have double. Anyone says, therefore a Talmud that was really close to a tzaddik can feel, not just when the tzaddik passes away. Every time that a tzaddik has an ali, he rises in kedusha. How does he rise? And the neshama goes up. There is a combination of the upper and the neshama lower, and it's dragged upwards and down. It's not that closely tied where it takes it permanently. The upper neshama goes up back. There is this pishnayim each time that there's a aliyah for the first tzaddik. And aliyah must come only through a yirida first. Arizal is going to exercise. You must go down first. Yirida instead of aliyah. If there is a Talmud who is really a Talmud, really truly mekushah to his Rebbe, the emes becomes so close part of the Rebbe that he actually feels his margish. He feels the aliyahs and yiridas of the Rebbe. He becomes actually part of it. Think of the Zohar about the sun and the moon. When it said there was one lantern, two big ones, one big one small. The whole story, it's not two big ones, big and one small. It's one. The sun and the moon are so much one that if the sun is big, the moon is big. Two big lanterns in the sky. If the Talmud is close to the Rebbe, he becomes one with the Rebbe. So he begins to feel the aliyahs and yiridas. Everything that happens to the Rebbe happens to the Talmud too. If he's zecher, these three Talmidim were so closely adhered to the Rebbe, the Chassidut, so much that when he traveled, they were with him. If he went up, he had his aliyahs too. He went down, he had his down. The minor part of physical suffering, that went along with it. That's part of being mamish achilik. We say that the tail of a lion is a lion. One will be the tail of a lion, better than the head of a fox. But the tail of a lion goes where the lion goes too. It's protected by the head of the lion, and it goes where the lion goes. Here, these Talmidim were so closely attached to Hashem, as they went with him through the forest, through thick and thin, through suffering, and through aliyahs. This is the reason why they too had this. First question was, what did the goy have to do with this? Why did the goy go through this? Yes, the goy. Why did the horse go through this? Why did they had to? The horse had to stay there in the dark in the forest. The chalal, the secret of goyim. So you don't want to talk about too much, but the Gemara says clearly that if you see goyim suffer, if they were smart, they'd slap the Jews for it. Because why did goyim suffer? Only because of the Jews. Because goyim are like behemoths. Why should a goy have the flu? You ever see a cat catch the flu? A dog. My apologies to the cats and dogs comparing these youngsters to it. You don't see these behemoths get sick. or get diseases, or have, you ever see a fox have financial troubles? It's still going bankrupt. He has his food, he has his livelihood. So these goyim are the same as the animals. They should have none of these problems. What then? Because of the power of the chila, because the power of choice. Because of the power of choice, power of the chila. Therefore, if the world would be conducted in the manner where only the Jews are sick and suffer, the goyim don't, there'd be no more chila, because we know the truth. We know there's a difference between the two. We can see it. The chila means we cannot see it. You have to just have a Buddha. The Jews are chosen, the Jews are selected, and Hashem watches over the Jews, and the Jews suffer in this world, because this world belongs to Esau, belongs to the goyim. It's a very dark world, but the future world is the world of light. Great light, that's the world of the Jews. Therefore, the goy goes along with the animal. It's just to show that to hide the blind people to think that everything goes along by nature. Actually, it's an act of Hashem. That's the answer. That's the reason. And of course, this is how wonderful it is. If we can take this to heart and really become part of tzadik, become part of tzadik, and to deserve it, to become part of tzadik forever. It comes to the world of light. Mashiach comes. Haba, we should any part of the tzadik, deserve attack to the truest kashas to see with our eyes. They ask the Shir Kenu, the million basic Shemena. Take us as Zimun. It is that women are required to bench also the mezuzah. There are many days that say that if 3 women ate together, they're required to say that it's a nice eye, you don't bench it. Dear Rebbitzins, Yachnes, Yentes, they only bench it. However, there are many days like that. But it is better, much better, even according to them, if they can even tzaddik with men, they should better answer to the men rather than to bench by themselves. As far as if there are 3 women and 1 man, he should have to answer to their benching, you know where. Every person is clean and zibur though. In other words, the din is that, let's say, women should not bench by themselves mezuzah. Though they may, but they should not. However, if they ate together with men, they are just as bound to listen to answer to the mezuzah as men are. They do not have any right to bench by themselves to leave without answering the mezuzah. This much of a fear they do have. A katan who is under 13 years old is not considered fit to join a mezuzah. You cannot add him to a mezuzah. Until he's 13 years old in one day, then he can be studied, he can be counted as part of 3 or part of 10. Then, at that age, even he can be the mevodah, he can bench already. There are days that say that a katan could be counted if he is wise enough to understand the din of mezuzah, to understand who he's benching to, one who has sechel. That's why Zayni Kodesh says that we find the Yeruka benched. Yeruka was 5 years old. He was with Arizal Tamidim. The God was supposed to bench. The biggest one, so this 5-year-old Yeruka benched before they Tamidim Shuli Charizal. That included even a Muslim Shuli Charizal. So if we have a cut like that today, then of course he may bench. Among our Ketanim, or our small heads, young Ketanim, we do not consider anybody under 13 today fit to bench. It's a very delicate din. A person who is not religious, even if he's to a degree of Shana Shabbos, which is the basic item, Chala Shabbos is surely not clear. A person who is a cow, he doesn't daven, he skips davening, or he does other sins openly, he cannot be counted to a mezuzah. It's a very delicate item because you find many times people get together. And one of them is a friend who is not that religious, and they count them as a mezuzah. He knows how to bench, he knows how to answer. So there are some people who are mitzvah them. There are some days that say you have to be mekadev them, to show them a wrong, give them a chance, like we have in Hilchos Kriyas HaTorah. To give an aliyah to the Chal Shabbos, point that did is wrong. Yet there are some days that say the contrary, give them an aliyah. Let them come closer, You recording them, don't repel them. So in this case too, the halacha, of course, is not to be inside of them if it's a matter of emergency or if there's an extenuating circumstance, then possibly, it might be possible to decide them. A ger, a convert, could be considered part of the Zuman. Although we say, the Zuman al Shilchato, they say that to our forefathers, a ger could say that too because Avraham Avinu is called Av Hamoigoy, is the father of all nations, so that the ger too could say that too. We should zecher to bench the kavod, give the brachas properly, receive the Birkat Shemayim, brachas from Hashem. These brachas should compass Bias Mashiach and kiruv, and Tzias Hamisim. The 7-day Shiva, the mitzvah for a million to gather in the house of the Nifta. It's a very big zachus for the Rishon. The Rishon itself remains in the house during the 7 days. Does not leave this world, the earthly world, until after the Shiva is over. In the 7 days, the mourners walk outside, walk around the block. The reason they walk around, you can run away and account for that, unless they accompany the departure of the Nifta. So this 7 days then, very vital that knowing, aware of the fact that the Nifta is here and every single word that is said, he hears. Feeling is very acute on the part of the Shabbat. The words should be said that are beneficial to the Nifta. The biggest support for the Nifta is, of course, when he has a family, especially children, who are showing the Shabbos and mitzvahs, who show during these 7 days that they abide by the mitzvahs, they weren't paid for the sake of the Nifta. There are different things that benefit the Nifta, especially now when the din is the strictest beginning, strong as din, I hope, for the heavenly court for the Shema. Nifta these benefits. 1, studying the Kaddish. 2, the learning, Shnayis of Shulchan. 3, cooking. And if you have to daven, if you have cake and drink, it's Shem Aliyah, Nifta, Aliyah, the Shema should have an elevation. That's the biggest source for it. So, daven, Kaddish, we'll learn 3 words. Hashem, Tzachus, Rifta, Shloim, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, and then if we have Tikuney, the din says, and this is based, of course, on the Gemara, that burial is a mitzvah of burying a person who passed away. Because the posek says a person came from dust, from earth, they must return to earth. The person was created from earth. It's a long topic. The person actually has different elements. In fact, science would say there's over 100 elements that a person consists of. We know that there are basically 4 elements, basically. And one of those 4 is earth, and the element of earth is stronger than the other 3. Of course, this world, the physical world, that's the main element, the prime element. So since a person is himself a bit of earth, dust, he must return to his dust. So this earth is there, the body has a ticket. We speak about the neshama, has its ticket for different mitzvahs. It's a person. What about the body? The guf is just as important. It's an equal part of a person's life. The Torah says that the body, the mace, the body of the niftar, is not at a ticket unless it is placed into the earth. There, the ticket comes to the body. It looks very harsh. The body disintegrates, deteriorates. What can we do about that? The answer is that is the ticket for the body, because what you see is the weaker part of the body, the less important part of the body disappearing. In its place, which you cannot see, is a much superior body to this, one that is spiritual powers. When we see this, there's an ace when all the dead come back to life, we'll then see what this was exchanged for. But we cannot be the new one, the superior one, unless the first one has its ticket. And this is possible only in buried the ground. Therefore, those people who bury themselves in mausoleums and marble vaults, these people, the United States, are destroying any chances they have for Tikuney Zohar or for Aruch Zohar. There's no way that the neshama can go into the Eden before the body has its ticket. So either that, or of course the worst thing possible, is worse than suicide, are those who order cremation. The person cremates himself, and there's no way that the body can ever come back again to cremation, and no way that the neshama can have a ticket. And one of the worst things that's possible, much worse than murder. Well, in case of the chavruta itself, being buried in the ground, again, one item that has to be warned about, which is ignored very sadly. The fact that there are people who are misled by high-pressure salesmen in the funeral chapels and tell the family you have to show deep respect for the niftar by putting him into a box that is fit, that is respectful. Expensive oak box, beechwood, or bronze caskets. These things they say in the last opportunity you have to show respect to the niftar. There's nothing more misleading than that. This is the least respectful item and the most harmful item that can happen to the niftar. The niftar is placed in one of these solid boxes where the body cannot make contact with the earth, and then that niftar is imprisoned. The body and soul are imprisoned. There's no way for it to get out until perhaps years later the box is finally disintegrated. Once it's bronze, it can stay there who knows how long. And this is the evil that is done by those who mislead and by poor innocent children who think they're doing something for the sake of the parent, and actually there's nothing more detrimental, harmful to the body. And therefore, in truth, the proper way to bury the body is in the ground itself. It is not respectful to place the body into the earth itself. We use a light covering. This light covering consists either of a sheet or boards that are placed around the body, as done in itself. Boards placed around a board which the body is placed on top of, and sort of an arc over it, but nothing covering the body itself, or open air, there's open accessibility to the earth. Here in America, we have where we could get boxes that are loose. You can agree? And the looseness of these boxes, the looseness of these covers, are the biggest support. If it was possible ever for Nick to come back and say what was the best thing that happened to him, he would say the fact that he was buried in a coffin that was loose. Let's look into it. If there was a possibility to come back. The answer is there is a possibility. The Gemara tells us in actual cases, if those who have a mudah, who have true faith, in the words of the Torah, cases of those who did come back and stated the fact that the biggest of this the body is make contact with the earth. That's why very firmly we can say that in this case, the niftar had a tremendous skill. It is possible. The niftar is present now to speak. He would express his thanks to the family for what they did for him. Of course, above all, the mitzvah kiruv av, respecting a father, exists well after the father's passing away. The Torah says we must respect the father after passing too. In fact, much more so during his lifetime. Much more so. Why is respecting a father, a parent, after his death more important than his life? The reason is during a parent's life, they don't need the children that badly. They need the themselves. After they passed away, they cannot be the mitzvahs there anymore. They need the assistance of children. Every mitzvah that a child does is recorded on the benefit of the children. Every time they do Torah, they do Shabbos, they do a mitzvah, the stuff helps the Neshama of the parent. The first act you do is the proper burial, and to know that this does not mean reflection. It means still a tie, a strong bond between the children and the parent, and throughout their entire life, they must show this bond by keeping the yortzeit, for example, by doing mitzvahs, by having a tie with the neshama, even during occasions. Whenever there's a happy occasion of wedding yourself, customers in every cemetery, they literally invite the neshama on the niftar to come to this wedding, and the Israeli Kodesh says this is a serious item. The Israeli Kodesh states emphatically clearly, not on white, that the neshama is taken out of your laden and sent to this affair to participate. Invisibly, of course, there's no sign. You've got the text of the neshama, sense it, you feel it. The neshama is there at this occasion. This is the sign of bond that the child will show to the parent throughout their entire life. And by doing this, if we can fully listen, kiruv av, to better degree than previously. And the third, the Neshama of Nifta will be a meditation, a daven, and the tefillah of a mace is much more powerful than the tefillah of any person's life. Much more powerful. These tefillahs will definitely help this daven with heart. Feeling for the sake of his wife and children and family, he can never again know any sorrow. But he's not going to forgive him. Keep simcha of feeling more than this. Hashem will destroy the whole of others. Death will no longer exist. Hashem will erase tears from off the face. This morning, because they have a powerful effect, which can very well create an effect, going into reality. So a person should avoid learning his dinim, except where it's necessary, compulsory. A time like this, you have to, otherwise the person should skim over it. The fact that during these 7 days the Neshama of the Niftar is present. The Neshama does not leave until the end of the Shiva, when the mourners walk outside of the house and they accompany the departure of the soul of the Niftar. And therefore it is beneficial for the Niftar, respectful and very great benefit during this trial, now the trial period in heaven, to learn halachas and mishnayos for the sake of the Neshama. Also to have tikkun after davening. So very briefly, a couple of halachas in the hilchos avelos, or hilchos mace. In this case, the family of Leviim. Leviim have the same din as Yisraelim as far as Tumah is concerned. Kohen has a separate special din. Kohen is not allowed to become Tameh, not allowed to go near a mace, near a dead person. A mace means a dead body. He's not allowed to go into a house where there is a mace. He's not allowed to become Tameh at all. In fact, he's not allowed to go under a canopy. If there's a house which has a canopy outside, as most chapels do, the Kohen must cross the street. He cannot walk under that canopy because he becomes Tameh. Any extension of the original house will make the person Tameh just as though he was inside. These are dinim for Kohen. But as we know, eventually, ultimately, there's going to be a transformation. But today, we have as Leviim will be Kohanim. We transform the Kohanim later on. The Kohanim will become Leviim. It's due to the union of the Chassidut and Geurais being transformed. However, this will be sometime in the future. The Gemara says very clearly, when Mashiach comes, those who are Kohanim today will still be Kohanim. It's much later afterwards, it's Nosson, when there'll be this change. So these dinim would apply only to the Kohanim themselves, because after Mashiach comes, there'll still be the dinim of the Mason. After the Mason will be no more Mason, and of course the dinim will remain. As how they'll apply will be in a spiritual sense. But meanwhile, we have this din that the Kohen is not allowed to become Tameh by being close to a mace means within 4 tvachim, or within 4 ames, if this is a grave. And also, he's not allowed to be in the house of a mace. He's also not allowed to become Tameh to even a part of a mace. If, let's say, they amputated an arm or a leg, then this is, the arm or the leg is an aver which is now dead. Part of a person which is now dead, and that is considered the same as the body, same as another body, even though it's part of it. In fact, even if there is a woman had a miscarriage, and the Eiffel, the embryo was so young, so early a stage, where there was no form of a body, this too is considered a mace. Unless, of course, it's completely water form. But all these things are forbidden for a Kohen to become Tameh to, and even if a person is dying in a hospital, any person, a Kohen cannot go close to that person, because a Kohen is forbidden to desecrate his kahuna. The posek in the Torah, he must guard his kahuna. Even if he already is Tameh, Let's say the Kohen became close to a mace, became Tomei, it doesn't mean he's allowed to stay there from now on. Every minute, every second he stays is an additional sin. Because he must still guard his Kedusha, and is allowed to remove himself from the presence of any mace. If a Kohen is in a house where the room is sealed, completely sealed, then there is like a Tikuney, and then there is a mace in a different room. The Kohen is not allowed to walk out of this room, because if he walks out he becomes tummy. He has to wait until the mace is removed from the premises, and then he can walk out. If a Kohen is asleep, or there's a mace around, he must be awakened and told to leave the premises. As we say, a Kohen cannot come within 4 ames of a caver. Even if there's a caver on the edge of the cemetery, there's no fence there, so you cannot walk within approximately 6 to 8 feet close to it. If the mace is moving, for instance in a hearse, it has to be carried, then he's allowed to come within 4 tvachim, which is about 2 feet. A little less than that. All these are dinim for the kahuna, for Tumas Gehanim. Of course, this shows how every Jew should obey his mitzvahs particularly. And right now, in reference to the present situation, talking about purity of mitzvahs, purity in reference to a mace. We know the Gemara says that a tzadik, one who is righteous, cannot be called dead. The tzadik does not die. The tzadik is always alive because the neshama lives. The neshama lives on. What does the neshama do now? What does the neshama of his family do right now? The neshama is just as occupied in the care, the concern of the wife and children as he was during his lifetime, and much more so. Much more so because now he has much more power to assist them. As much as our tefillahs combined can accomplish, the tefillah, one tefillah of the neshama can do much more in heaven. It has so much more effect at the heavenly throne of mercy. So, since he is the father, the husband, and cared so much during his lifetime, truly now, the source of his tefillahs will protect, will assist, will help the family, that they should be zecher to only good and hatzlacha, success, and everything. We should be zecher to see simchas. We should be zecher to see the simcha folius, the coming of Mashiach, and the things from here. Amen. This world and in Elam Haba, both. It is a mitzvah that is Igmilas Chesed, combines Nichol Real plus Igmilas Chesed, attached to it. This is Igmilas Chesed with the Chayim and the Mason, living and the dead. The Chayim, the family, the survivors, naturally it helps to alleviate their pain. The Mason too, because this helps too for the Nifta. Nichol Ve'elam helps the Nifta to have an aliyah in Gedim. When the Menachem come to visit, they are not permitted to say one word, to start speaking, until the Avel speaks first. First one to speak must be the Avel, and until he says anything, we cannot start any conversation. Also, the word Shalom, hello and goodbye, is forbidden on the part of the Menachem or the Avelim, either one. So in coming in, there's no greeting. In leaving, there's no goodbye. This is not impolite. This is a halacha. The din is that the Avel, and this Igav, by the way, includes also a chayla, a person who is sick, who is dead, who cannot rise up. The din is that this Avel, these Avelim who sit, are not required to stand up as a matter of covered, even before a Nasi. Nasi means the chief rabbi of the Hedron. He walks in, they're not required to stand up. They're not required, and there's no disrespect if they'll stand up, because they are mitzvah sitting shiva, and that mitzvah supersedes this because it is not a covered of one who's besimcha. It is also it's customary that a person wants to show respect to his friend, not to a friend. The friend comes in, he stands up for him, he rises up a little to greet him. Customary that the friend, in modesty, should say to him, "It's okay, sit down, don't get up." In this case, in the case of an Avel or a Chayla, the friend is not allowed to say sit. Sit means a curse. If he remains sitting in Shiva, sitting in Avelis in the morning, or to remain sitting, lying in the bed of pain and sickness, so he's not allowed to say that word sick, which would be a reflex action on his part. The Aharon says that a person is not allowed to say something tragedy occurs. He's not supposed to say that it's my fault, I didn't do right. This is even less than I deserve, because by saying that, he's inviting the Satan. This person never opened his mouth to invite the Satan. He says he hasn't had enough punishment. The Satan will say, fine, well, I can give it to you. In fact, the person is the one who sentences himself to any type of suffering or punishment. The person should be very careful to guard his tongue, because the tongue is the thing that can bring misfortune. A person can accidentally say something which could bring suffering on himself. A person should not say to an avil, these words too are apicursus. Actually, say to an avil, occurred, the tragedy occurred, what can you do? There's nothing you can do about it. In other words, he wants to console him by saying you can't do anything about it anyhow. This is, you can't change what Hashem did, you can't change things. This may sound like respect, but actually it is disrespect to heaven. Because it means that if you could change it, you would. What can you do? You can't. If you were able to change it, you would do it. This means that a person wouldn't be going against the Gzeda of heaven. A person must accept the Gzeda of Hashem with emunah, simplicity, and to be kabel the Aharon. Not to say anything that will invite more, but just to kabel the Aharon, to say a bracha. We have the Baruch Dynamics, which is a bracha for a tragedy. And in Slach, Sachem says, the Arizal brings in $10, everyone learned it, that a person, the Gemara says that every person for good news, a happy occasion, says the bracha Baruch HaTeva Meiter, Baruch Hashem who did good to me. Tragedy, the person says Baruch Dynamis, tragic truth. But when Mashiach comes, people will realize then that the chesed, the kindness of HaTov, and the deed of Dynamis is exactly the same. Hashem Aharon David and Kim Aharon. That I will praise Hashem Hashem is Chesed, and the Kim did, I'll give Hashem the same praise for praising that Baruch HaTeva Meiter. Because we'll understand then that there was no such thing as din as Hashem. It's all good. Tzach says that today, if a person is in that madrega, where he has so much emunah that he accepts the din of Hashem, just the word Chesed, and that person then is required to say HaTov HaMeiter for a tragedy that occurs. This is the Tzach Pesach, the Din Shalom is chelik on that, but this goes so far to show how it's possible, even time a person accepts the Gzeda of Hashem, b'tzorech ahava. A person does that, and he's assured that the Gzeda turns out to be one of chesed, of kindness and goodness, where he can see himself, and that henceforth he'll have only chasadim and simchas. Let's hope that the schus of the iftar will help the family, wife and children, that they should tzech only to simchas from now on. This tefillah coupled with all the tefillahs, the Shabbos and the Torah, that the Chal Yisrael should say shortly, becoming a Mashiach, the Mikdash and the Simcha always to make. There's a number of restrictions the Yavah is not allowed to do. For example, he's not allowed to change his clothes during the Shiva. He must wear the same torn garments as the tree was, except for Shabbos. Not allowed to wash, bathe. He cannot bathe at all, not even in cold water. During Shiva, he's allowed only to wash his hands and face in cold water only. When the Shiva is over, for 30 days, the first 30 days, he's allowed to wash his hands and face in warm water, and the entire body in cold water only. You cannot bathe in a warm bath until after the 30 days are over. Now, the Avelis on Shabbos is not a day for one. Yet, there are still Avelis that takes place there. The Rebbe should not leave the house during Shabbos if possible. To get a minyan in his house, he should daven in his house. If not the derech, you know, should go out to shul, the really derech, you know, one says, very much not even out there the 7 days and all. So, on Friday, and Shabbos, just before Shabbos begins, he's then allowed to wash himself, prepare for Shabbos. And that washing, again, is the same as during the week, because on Shabbos, though there is no Avelos, there's no Avelos open, a hesi. You cannot do it openly. Mourning openly means that you sit on the floor, that's mourning openly. Or you wear torn garments. So openly you cannot show that you're mourning, but hiddenly you have to. And washing is a hidden item, sinner. Therefore you cannot wash on Shabbos differently than during the week, if that's how else with sinner. So as soon as Shabbos begins, the other is allowed to put on his shoes just before Shabbos begins, and to sit on a chair, change his garment, and even learning at Torah is forbidden during Shiva, except in those items that pertain to others. And that same thing applies to Shabbos also. That's the sinner. Nobody sees you what you're learning. And that applies to Shabbos also. You cannot learn regular learning. Except one thing which is allowed, and that is not in the Seder, twice in the Shulchan. That's allowed because it's a chiyuv, national fascist, just like Kishma. Now on Shabbos, if they call the other to the Torah, then he must go up. So it's wrong to call him. If at the end they call him, he doesn't go up there, but he's showing Avelis publicly. So he must go up if they call him. It's better that they not call him. And if he is a kohen, the only one there, then it's best to walk out of the shul before the kriya begins. They won't call him. The teacher says that in the town one of our places was the chief Rebbe in his shul, and there is supposed to be given a aliyah every week. So each week his meaning was they got shlishi in the town's meaning. Each one has a different meaning, so shlishi, Aharon. It doesn't mean to go shlishi every week. Then one time he was in Avel, came Shabbos, and the Chazan, the Gabbai, did not call him up. He didn't call him, that time walked by himself. He said, no, in fact, he gets something every single week. If he doesn't get it now, it will be a sign of Avelos openly, therefore it must compulsory that he goes up. That's in a case of where it's so obvious, it's so well known, and so regular. That's why in the case of a Baal Kodesh, one of the standard Baal Kodesh in the shul, the Shabbos, it is best that he is not daven in his own shul. Because if he goes there, he doesn't wait, he's not supposed to leave Baal Kodesh, no should Baal Kodesh, so because it is not laying the Torah, open sign of Avelos. So therefore it is best that the elder is not close to shul, his own place, if he's a Baal Kodesh. If he'll force anything to show that he's not that he is a noble. The one item about Shabbos is that though there is no open Avelos on Shabbos, it does benefit in that it is counted towards Shabbat. Though they do not mourn, they do not sit on the floor, wear shoes, go dressed properly, they celebrate the Shabbos openly as well as anybody else, but it is counted as one of these 7 days. So without actually openly mourning, this one day counts among the 7, and this completes the 7. Shabbos is, of course, the Yom HaShvi. Shabbos is the Yom Berucha, the day in which Kodin is Abed Aminah. Shabbos is the day where all sin and all evil, and of course the basis of evil, death itself, is set to rest. We should observe it to the true Shabbos Kodesh, Shabbos Berucha, and we see the end of all suffering, coming of Mashiach, and the Avelos, the laws of the morning, which are the only laws that are permissible to learn during the 7 days of Shiva, and which are a very important benefit to the neshama of a niftar who was here during all this time. It then says that an aval, this morning, is not permitted to leave the home for any reason. During the entire 7 days he must stay in the house itself, even if it's a question of a loss in business, unless it's a big loss, possibly, but he's allowed to go out temporarily with a definite time set in mind to come back. This is so important that he cannot even go to shul to daven. It's a matter of davening the Yechidus. Imagine how important Tzil Tzibur is. then it's got to be a fetus in the house and to go to shul. Except on Shabbos, if you couldn't get a million together, then it's possible to go to shul, but if it's for the sake of a mitzvah, it's impossible to do otherwise. Let's say the ovel is a male, then the bris must be done on time. I'm not sure it precedes everything else. The days of Shiva are 7. The word Shiva alone means 7, which implies that the time for mourning is a 7-day period, on which the Shabbos counts as 1. However, these 7 must be complete 7 days, yet we have a din that a part of a day is counted as a whole day. So if the Shiva begins on the first day, in the afternoon, even for 1 hour, until dark, that counts for a full day. The last day, the 7th day, if there's Shiva for 1 hour, or for a certain period of time, and that counts for an entire day. So if the 7th day, right after Shachas, as soon as the Menachem, when they come to console the mourners, have left, that's considered the completion of the 7th day. As soon as davening is over, everyone's left the house, no one left here of the Menachem, only the of themselves, then they are allowed to end the Shiva the 7 days of mourning by going outside to accompany the neshama of the nifta. We said he is present during the entire 7 days. As soon as the Shiva is over, the neshama departs. And the walking around the block represents the eagle, the circle, that shows the eternal life of the neshama. Now this does not mean that the neshama is departing completely. The neshama departs from these premises, but the nefesh, the neshama, is still very much aware of what goes on, and many times a lot of things happen for the good of a person is due solely to the fact that the departed parent was instrumental in davening, being a scholar for the family. This is what helped them. So it's a sense of farewell. The actual presence of the neshama here, neshama going back to heaven, will still be tied to the family. That's why it's a mitzvah to visit the grave of the departed one. It's not like some people erroneously make a very bad mistake of waiting till years up before going to the grave. That's very disrespectful to the neshama, the niftar, and very harmful for the person himself. Go to the grave immediately after the latest, very latest, after the 30 days are up. Better, of course, true custom is after the 7 days are up to try to visit the grave. But there's nothing to do with a stone. Monument is unrelated to the visiting of the grave. It is best, of course, in that respect also, not to wait, as some do, for a year to put up a stone. It's an American major error. A person dies, they wait a full year to put up a stone, which again is doing harm to the neshama, because we find the posek, the origin of a matzeva comes from Yaakov. It says that when Rachel was nostalgic when she passed away, Yad said Yaakov Matzeva Kurasa. Yaakov placed the stone in the grave immediately. Immediately, right after the 7 days were up, the stone was put up. That's the minig in Yerushalmi which should be proper minig. So we said again, these 7 days are up after the davening now, which means that the clothes can be changed. You're then allowed to wash with cold water, to bathe in cold water, or to wash hands and face in warm hot water. During the period of 30 days, you cannot bathe regularly, you cannot put on clothes that are comparatively good. That is, if the 30 days are up, you then are allowed to. In the case only of parents, then the Isser of mourning is 12 months. This means that you're not allowed to shave or take a haircut for 12 months, unless after 30 days you have the expediency of friends who tell you that you look badly, and some of this commits the person to shave after 30 days. The 12 months are up at the end of 12 months solid, which means that this year you have a leap year, you have 13 months in the Hebrew year, so the mourning period ends after 12 months, not after 13 months. And of course, as we said, we just want to close with this one point, and this should supersede all. The neshama, of course, is close. The neshama is concerned not with its own welfare, but the welfare of the family. After passing, as much as there was ahava, devotion of a husband and father, and wife and children, there is still that much more afterwards. It's very funny to tell stories of many times the neshamas came to report about how they were trying their best the good of the welfare of the family. This shows a closeness. And this is what we want to point out too. Arizal once had his Talmidim visit him, and they came to him with a problem. Certain halacha, a certain kasha they had, we can't speak about it. Now they got some stereotype with a different point. So we could speak about the fact that he said to them, I see that you are troubled. When you are troubled, I'm troubled too. And I want to help you immediately because we are one. We are as one. We feel each other's pain, we feel each other's symptoms. And that's the reason why he said that Yaakov did not succeed in his Talmidim. They all died because they did not have this mutual respect and ahava for each other. We, he said, to have this respect and ahava, each one feels for the other as he would for himself. It's like one single organism. And that's the true meaning of a unit, a group. In this case, we want to point out, Baruch Hashem, to the family here too, how wonderful it is to have this unity in a group. We have a group here that put itself out, made sacrifices to be present during these Shiva. We have a very big minyan. We could have had exactly 10, as most places have, but the rest could have relaxed back there. It's a difficult trip, especially now in the very cold, icy mornings. This morning we didn't have proper good cars, they had red cars. It was not simple. But because of this feeling of unity, we find that it prevails whether it is a time of big simcha, when they all are joined together in happiness, whether it's a time of consolation, whether condolences, they all join together as one. They each feel the symptom of the other, the sorrow of the other. They join together now, just as one, with the same feeling, and expressing, we all express this feeling of condolences to the family, that the other should be zecher. The niftar should be a realization for them, and that henceforth, and forever after, this family should never know of any sorrow or suffering. There should be only simchas out, simchas b'frat. Every member of the family, simchas b'kar, the entire family, the entire car itself.
Maybe start the dinner of Hilchos Ma'acholos Asuros. Dinner about certain items that are not permissible, whether it's food or other things, clearly in items of food, are not kosher or that are not permissible because of danger. First thing speaks about blood that is found in eggs. Any egg that has a blood spot in it is treif. There are rare cases where only the blood itself is treif and the rest of the egg can be eaten. But you need a very special expert to recognize that. Of course, we don't have it today. So if a blood spot is found in an egg, the egg must be discarded, thrown out. Now, if the egg itself is treif, and it's mixed together with other eggs, the other two become treif. So, very few times you have that problem where you mix an egg with many others. Only where it is used for baking purposes. When a woman bakes a cake, she uses 5 or 6 eggs, sometimes even more, and she must be careful to examine every egg first to see there's no blood on it before she puts the egg into the dough, flour. Because you can have a whole pot full of flour and eggs, and then one egg falls in, and it messes up the whole thing. One of those medias of shabbos which should be avoided, must be avoided. The eggs must be examined very carefully before any baking is done. The blood of fish is not the same as the blood of meat, or even eggs. Fish blood is permissible. There's no necessity to salt fish. Really, to get the blood out, the blood of fish is the same as the body of the fish. There's no din of blood being usher and no din of shchita being necessary. So, therefore, the fish may be eaten with its blood. But if the blood of the fish ran off onto a dish, and it's just the blood alone of the fish in that dish, then it's forbidden to eat that blood. To drink that blood or to dip into it because of blood sign, which means that a person might not know it's the blood of fish, or think it's the blood of meat. We get the impression that this is permissible. The person doesn't know the din and will be misled. So if there is the blood of fish alone, separately, forbidden to use that blood of fish unless it is obvious that the blood of this fish, that this blood is the blood of fish. For example, if there are scales in the blood, fish scales, then a person can see this is not meat blood or fish blood, then it's permissible. The same as we had cases before with Masa V'Cholov. You're not supposed to drink milk with meat, but if it's the milk of coconut, which is not considered milk, however, you may drink that milk with meat. If, however, that milk is alone in a separate dish, separate glass, then it's forbidden because of not a sign. Unless you have on the table a coconut where a person can see this came from the coconut, then it's no not a sign. Say to you here, a person can see that this blood came from the fish, then it is permissible to eat that because it is blood that is mutter, and is not considered blood of meat. Let's be referred to purify ourselves from all type of bloods, not only pure down to the Evnei Hashem, the endless, Zecher to see, it needs to be purified. Among items that are forbidden to eat, we begin with the halacha of blood. Blood, of course, is so serious an item that when it is midiraisa, it is worse than any other kind of food, practically. Worse than all isurim, which are isur lav. The penalty is malchus, 39 lashes. In this case, blood is the penalty of curse. Curse means a heavenly penalty of death. That's how serious blood is. The reason being, of course, that blood contains the nefesh, the spirit, the living spirit of the animal. Blood also contains the nefesh of a person. That's why we say when you kill a person, you spill his blood. You cause the soul to depart. So in that case, then, it would appear to us that much worse than one who eats meat without salting it, blood of meat, would be a vampire who drinks human blood. Of course, a vampire does it by killing the person first, or simultaneously. Speaking about human blood, though, if there is human blood to be drunk, which is worse. We're not speaking about how tasty it is, but as far as the Isur is concerned, the Gemara says that it is that human blood is less usher than animal blood. Because animal blood is also with an Isur, and human blood is with an Aharon. Called Dam Mahalchei Shtayim. Dam Mahalchei Shtayim, human blood is to walk on 2 feet. Animals do not walk on 2 feet. Some of them, depends what color they are. How do we find a case of human blood, practical case, where it affects every person? A person takes a bite of a piece of bread, finds a discoloration of the bread. His gum is bleeding. And some of this, a drop of that blood got on this piece of bread, that bread now becomes unkosher. Not the bread, but the part which has the blood in it. So he's supposed to cut away the place where the blood is, and throw it away, and he can eat the rest of the bread. It does not become treif. It's not considered to be absorbed in the entire thing. Whenever you see the blood, though, that must be removed. Now this is only the blood that was already left, came out of him, it was extracted from the body, its origin, its source, then it becomes treif. But while the blood is still within its source, it is not treif yet. So a person, let's say, whose gum is bleeding, he doesn't have to keep on getting rid of that blood. If the person swallows that blood, it is not considered treif because it has not left his mouth yet. That's a very important halacha. As long as the blood does not leave the person, the blood is not treif. Once it has left the person, then it is treif. You have the same thing with animal blood. You learn that if the blood is in the meat, though it was not salted, the person wants to, he lives in the jungle and wants to eat raw meat. This raw meat is not salted, the blood is still in there, the blood is not treif, it's still part of the meat. Once the blood oozes out of the meat, when it's cooked, that blood becomes treif of blood, then it can answer other things, and it's forbidden to eat or drink. So a person who's a side item, a person whose gum is bleeding, that if he could swallow that blood, but if he could draw it out by sucking on it in the weekdays. On Shabbos, it's forbidden to do that. You're not allowed to squeeze out anything on Shabbos, so you just have to leave it as is, rinse his mouth, or swallow without extracting any blood by force. different than Shabbos and the weekdays. The point is, though, that we see that the din of dam by a person is also asur. Once a dam has left the person, it is asur, but not in the same severity as the dam behemoth. In the case of dam behemoth too, the blood of behemoth, we know also that according to many days, not every type of blood is the same Isa. There is some blood that is with the Aharon too. For example, if Yodim brings it according to many days, in Yishanim, blood is different than Moshe Feinstein. Exactly the opposite. Moshe Feinstein, meat and milk is treif, midiraisa, only when it's cooked first. You take cold milk and cold meat, it's treif, midiraisa. Midiraisa, it's also only derech bishul, when it's cooked first. Blood is just the opposite. Blood, if it's raw, not cooked, then it's also midiraisa. If blood was cooked, it alters the appearance of the actual taste of the blood itself, and it is no longer also midiraisa, but also midiraisa. These are the dinim of blood. There are some dinim about blood being found in milk. We do not have that today because we have a special purifying process to these waters. No, we don't find that blood with milk mixed. It happens sometimes that the animal is bleeding internally, and when you milk the animal, some blood comes out. If you ever find that, you have to ask a shaila about it, but as we said, it's so rare that it doesn't actually exist here. Let's hope that we are zeichet to purify really the blood within our heart, which means the Yetzer, Shnei Yetzer, which we feel to Evdei Hashem, the Emes, with all the Adam Shemalev, and to be zeichet to the Biyaskel study. Food that's also to eat. We come now to a din which should sound very familiar. We spend so much time on it, so many weeks and months on it. Din that basar b'chalav, mixture of milk and meat, is asur. You're not allowed to have any pleasure out of it, either through eating or through any kind of profit, like giving it to a dog, to a goy, or even worse, to a yagush. You're not allowed to cook it even without having to do anything further. Just the cooking alone is asur, cooking, eating, or not. The Gemara will tell us this Shabbos where we learn it from. We have started already a few, but we'll have it in more depth, especially after the second sheet. In case, therefore, something came about a mixture of milk and meat, then a person must ask a shaila what to do with it. Because sometimes it's also b'hanah, sometimes it's also only b'achila. Depending upon most cases, whether it's also midiraisa or rabbanan. This midiraisa, it's also b'hanah too. The rabbanan, it's also only b'achila. The person has to know these dinim, and he doesn't. If this happens, this kind of mixture, he has to ask a shaila among those who spend time in the class of Shabbos, unless they know it all. These halachas. The din says, something which we learned too, Mishnah, two Jews who know each other, even if they are not too friendly, they sit at the same table, they're not allowed to eat the same table, one milk and one dairy and one meat. So they make a separation between them, which means it is best if they use a different cloth, tablecloth, to put one of them. Food that is forbidden, any forbidden combinations. Well, they did of basar b'chalav. You're not allowed to mix milk and meat together. You're not allowed to cook it together. You're not allowed to eat it together. You're not allowed to have hanoah in it. If there was a mixture of basar b'chalav, you're not allowed to sell it, to give it away, to have any pleasure whatsoever worth anything in it. It's if it's basar b'chalav deraisa. If a person ate meat, or even a soup, a meat soup without actual meat in it, but it was cooked with meat, then he's not supposed to eat milk or any dairy product until he waits at least 6 hours. And the same thing applies to a person who chews meat. For example, you have a mother sometimes chews up meat for a child without swallowing it. As long as the meat was chewed between the teeth, they have to wait 6 hours. And if after waiting 6 hours, a strand of meat was found between the teeth, It must be removed, but there is no necessity to wait 6 hours. You just have to wash out the mouth. You have to eat something in between. And then the person may drink milk immediately afterwards. If the 6 hour time is elapsed. If the food, the soup or vegetables were cooked in a pot, a fleshly pot, which had no meat in it at all, it was cooked in a fleshly pot, even though the pot had been used recently, and then there is no waiting time necessary. A person may drink milk or eat dairy product after there's food in this pot, but he is not allowed to drink milk together with this. For example, if this pot had vegetables cooked in it, he cannot drink milk, a sandwich of this vegetables and food with milk at the same time. He's allowed to have one after the other, but not together. If a person ate dairy, he's allowed to eat meat afterwards if it's a different meal. You cannot wash and eat dairy